data migration tool. I suspect you're all here really to see Amnon singing. That is a talent I don't possess. But nevertheless, it is great to see so many people here for me to talk about data migration. My perception of data migration within the Salesforce community is that it's not looked upon very favourably. I don't know how many people here have done data migration work, but the last couple of years that I've spent meeting people and going around partners, I go in there and we talk about a Salesforce implementation, and when I mention data migration, they basically run for cover. They dive under their desk. They don't want to know about it. Great for me, but it is interesting that it's looked upon as a nightmare thing to do. And I suppose really that perception is, I think it probably is, there's a bit of spinning going on. I think that's probably true. And I'm wondering whether through this presentation tonight we might be able to change that perception slightly. I don't know. But anyway, so a little bit about, a quick one-pager on me and CCR. We've been going for 20-odd years. We are based in that wonderful city of Salisbury, which we all know about. The Sunday Times said that Salisbury was the best place to live in the UK. Sure, it wasn't any sort of PR exercise, but we must be doing something right if we're near that. So we started, interestingly, as a mailing house, sending out brochures on behalf of luxury brands. We then realised that data was key, and not only making sure that that data that was mailed was clean, it was actually, where does the data sit? What sort of CRM system does it belong in? Well, we worked for a couple of very high-end brands, which we all know, but I won't mention who they are. But they literally had their data in an Access database. And they said to us, you know, what can we do with this? We can't even see it, we can't locate it, we can't do any analysis. What should we do with it? So we actually put them onto Salesforce. We didn't know Salesforce much. We didn't even know how to do a data migration at that point. But we put the data onto Salesforce for them. And they're quite well-known brands. And it went very well. So about sort of 5 years ago, we decided to literally make data migration our sort of main product. So much so that now we only employ about 20 people, but half of those are data migration specialists. Because we focus on data migration, we put in a proper methodology. When we did those two jobs, we didn't really have a methodology. And, you know, speaking to so many people in the last 2 years where data migration is a nightmare, it is, in my view, clear that a methodology is not being used. So we actually follow one. It's called PDMB2, and I'll come on to it. So we work with quite a few Salesforce SIs, from registered to platinum partners, which is great for us because we get involved in sort of different sort of migrations. Some very complex, we've just done one recently that was very complex, but then some others which are literally at Salesforce, 3 objects. But the important point to note is they use the same process, the same migration process for every migration we do. We have experience in migrating from all major CRMs. So I've listed a few: Act, Oracle, Racers Edge, Dynamics, and I mean the list is endless. NetSuite, Sage, Donor Strategy, you know, I'm sure there's many more. But we primarily, 90% of our migration work is onto Salesforce. So how do we do it? We have a proven methodology. I'm going to come on to that in the next page. But this proven methodology, by following it, it reduces the risk of the migration going pear-shaped, because it assigns responsibility to the relevant people. When you work on a data migration project, everybody knows what they've got to do with this methodology. The client knows what they've got to do, the migration partner knows what they've got to do, and the SI knows what they've got to do. It also gives visibility throughout the project. Everyone knows where they're at throughout the project. I mean, I'm sure if you work on a data migration, there'll be various stages where the clients will be going, where on earth are we? What's going on? Who's doing what? But by following this methodology, they'll know exactly where they're at. Keep the client involved at all times using a DQR process. This is to do with project governance. So the DQR process, which I'll come on to, just shows the client where you're at. It involves the client all the time. They make the decisions on the data migration. Enables the client to go live with no failed records. Well, this is really important. I suspect that if you've done data migration yourselves, it might be that you've imported data based on some import templates. The data's been populated, you import it, you tell the client you can go live with Salesforce. Oh, but by the way, there are 4,000 failed records here. Over to you to fix. Well, the methodology that we use, that doesn't happen. Because if there are any failed records, the client knows about it, and they have made the decision on why those records are not going to be migrated. It's really important. So the process. Introduction to the client. Obviously at this point you sign an NDA with the client. As we know, GDPR, huge, compliance, everything. So the client probably says to you, if you're, let's say we're moving from Dynamics to Salesforce, the client probably says to you, George, how long is this going to take? How many days is it going to be? When can we go live? How much is it going to cost? Well, we have no idea at this point. So you've got to set the client's expectations. And we do this by doing some landscape analysis. So what happens here, you sign the NDA, you ask for a backup of Dynamics. So they send you a backup. You then do some landscape analysis, and you've got to work out from that backup what data the client's got. We do a bit of profiling that is a table and field analysis of the Dynamics database. So within Dynamics, they're going to have hundreds and hundreds of tables. But in reality, they're probably only migrating 10 to 20 tables. Accounts, contacts, opportunities, campaigns, activities, attachments, whatever it is. So once you've done that field and table analysis, you can really identify the scope of the project. If you don't do it, you're gonna start off with problems from the very beginning. So if you do the landscape analysis, the table and field, a bit of profiling, understanding how all the tables link together, then you can properly scope out the migration and properly you can work out how long it's going to take, sort of. But it puts you in a good position. Obviously, at this point, you give your proposal, they hopefully sign it off. It's based on a number of days. We can't do T&M. It's normally fixed price. But hopefully, they sign off your proposal. And then you meet the key data stakeholders. Really important. I mean, you've obviously got to understand who you're dealing with the client, and you hope that the key data stakeholders know what they're on about. Otherwise, you could be doing the migration for a long time. So you just have to get a feel for who are the client you're dealing with, who knows the data well. That's really important. So you've signed off, you've done your landscape analysis, you've worked out who you're talking to the client. You're obviously talking to the SI who's doing the build of Salesforce, and that's when you get involved. There's no point doing anything too early, otherwise it's going to have to redo your work. So once the build is done, maybe 90% done, you do your gap analysis and mapping. I mean, we all know about this, I imagine it's fairly straightforward, but you're mapping all the data from every object from source to target. And you want to get the client to sign off on the mapping document. So they've got to sign off on all the fields that you're mapping to. It might not be 100% accurate, but as long as it's not far off that, you're in a good position. So you do all the mapping, all the gap analysis, work out if there are any gaps between source and target. And if there are, you raise what we call a DQR. So this is where project governance is involved in a migration project. You give the client access to the DQR depository. And any question you have on migration, obviously you don't send an email, you raise a DQR. So it's a central repository where you run the migration really. So any question you have, raise a DQR. Classic DQR could be something basic, like where you've got 300 records that don't contain a surname. This is mandatory in Salesforce, it's going to fail the migration. What would you like us to do? Or make a recommendation. Let's put no as the value, let's say, so that we can migrate those records. But the point is that you're raising that query, you're telling the client there is a problem with their data, and you're giving them the responsibility of telling you what to do. So on a standard migration of, let's say, 10 to 15 objects, you could probably have about 50 to 70 DQRs. But the important point is that you raise these DQRs, the client has answered them, you then close them, and then you can carry on with your scripting. And if there's a problem later on down the line, you just refer back to the DQR, and you just say, well, I'm so sorry about that, but you did tell us what to do in that DQR. It's a great way of running a migration, and it's really the core of PDMV2, practical data migration. So once you've done the gap analysis and mapping, you're really defining the transformations that you need to do. This is where we do all the scripting in SQL, and this is where all the transformations happen. There's a level of data standardization that we do, so there's a little bit of cleaning of data, looking at title fields, country fields. We have other tools that we use where you can maybe path the data to improve postcodes. And you're basically cleaning the data so it can fit the target. Also here is where you might do a certain level of deduplication, which you probably all know about. We tend to tell a client not to do dedupe as part of a migration, because it can be quite complex. I mean, a migration can be complex in itself, let alone adding that level of complexity in. If you think about whether you've got accounts and contacts and you do a dedupe, you've got to identify the duplicates using client criteria, put the duplicates into sets. You've then got to flag a master record using client criteria. They probably will struggle with the criteria that you think they should use. And classic flagging a master record, use the last modified date. But you've got to flag a master record, then you've got to create merge rules to merge all the duplicates in that set into the master record to create what we call the leftover golden record. And then you have to move all the related information of those records into the golden record. So it's quite complex, and our advice would be, perhaps you should do it afterwards. But the problem with that is that the client often says, well, when the users start using Salesforce, if there are duplicates, they're not going to be very happy about it. So there's a couple of options there, really. So we've done our landscape analysis, we've done our gap analysis and mapping, we've done all the scripting, we've built this SQL package, making the migration automated, and we're gearing up for what we call test loads. I suspect that some migrations, they don't do a test load, and that could be where people have problems, where migrations run into difficulties. We would always do a test load. Normally, we would probably do 2 test loads, depending on how many objects there are. But let's just say, there are 15 objects, we would do 2 test loads. So the first test load, you've done all the scripting, all the DQRs are closed, everything's complete, you load all the data into a sandbox. You then tell the client that we've completed the first test load, we migrated all into all these objects, and these are the number of records that we've migrated. Over to you to review. At that point, the client probably needs some help with how they review a test load. There are various options of doing this. Create reports, campaigns, just check it all works, and look up lots of contacts and accounts in your old system, make sure that they're sort of in the new system, everything's there. But it's quite a big piece of work. A client might say, well, I'll do it in an afternoon. No, it's not going to work like that. They've got to really review it. And in some cases, they've got to get some of the users reviewing it as well, because they're the guys who are going to use the system. So first test load is done. Client reviews test load. Comes back to us with all the queries, and there will be some. That's why we do test loads. But they will tell us that, okay, there's an error here, or that field has been migrated incorrectly, or there are some changes we need to make because the SI has got new fields, or there's some new transformations we need to do, that's fine. They let us know that. All we have to do is amend the SQL script that we've written. We don't have to start anything again. You can amend the script, and if you want, you can just update Salesforce for that change, so the client can actually go into Salesforce and see that that change has been updated. Depending on how many errors there are, you obviously do a second test load. And the second test load would be basically a dress rehearsal for go live. Is that right? Dress rehearsal, yeah. Rehearsal for go live. So this is a good opportunity to sort of put together a go live plan. So you go to the client, we're going to do a second test load, it's going to be a dress rehearsal, this is what we're going to do. You're going to send us a backup of Dynamics, and we need to understand how long that is going to take for you to send us that backup. Once we've received it, we've then got to download it, we've got to put it into our staging environment, we've got to run all our SQL scripts, delete all the data from the old load in the sandbox, and then we're going to load all this data again, having changed all our scripts to allow for all the other errors. And we're going to load all the data into the sandbox again for the second test load. And when you've done that piece of work, you then know how long go live is going to take. Because that's what they're all worried about. How long is it going to take for go live? When you do this dress rehearsal for the second test load, it's going to tell you how long it's going to take right up to the minute, really. So you've done the second test load. You let the client know all the objects again, all the records, number of records, over to them to review again. And you hope at that point that all the errors they found from the first test load, they check again, they've all been sorted. And really, if you're going to go live after the second test load, you don't want too many errors at that point. You sort of want them to sort of think, well, yeah, all looks good, we can now do a go live plan. The go live plan can be worked on. Normally, they want to go live on a Monday. So sorry, I missed a bit out. Sorry, so U18, we do test loads around U80 as well. So we work with the SI on that, that's very important. And obviously, before you do a go live plan, there are system retirement plans. So what are they doing with the old system? Are they turning it off? Is it read-only, etc.? And you put in the go live plan. So, normally clients want to go live on a Monday. So let's say the test load, or the load is going to take 3 days from receipt of backup. Then you normally might get the backup on a Thursday evening, run the process on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they go live on a Monday morning. Post go live, I mean, we don't disappear. I don't think any migration partner should disappear, because there will be problems after they've gone live. When the users start using the system on a day-to-day basis, they're probably going to have the odd query. So it's important that you hang around for after go live to do any sort of fixes, any updates that are needed. That's easily done. Because you've done 2 test loads, there really shouldn't be any nightmares or disasters, because you've done 2 test loads, they've checked it, everything looks good. So, why is it important to have a migration methodology? Well, I mean, 40% of migration projects go over time. I think that's a conservative estimate. I think a lot more. I reckon it's higher than that. But go over time, over budget, or fail entirely. In the last 3 weeks, actually, I've had 3 companies call me up to say they're doing a migration project. It hasn't gone well. Can we help? I mean, whether they're using a methodology, I don't know. But I think to not let that happen, you need to put in a methodology. Inaccurate data erodes value for users after go live. I mentioned that if you don't do it correctly, the user's going to have a nightmare with it, which is not going to reflect very well on the SI or, dare I say it, Salesforce. Good quality data allows reliable and real-time reporting, and it ensures consistency and good results. I think it does. I think, if you've done a migration and they go live, and the feeling is good, and the client uses it, it's a great, it's a great position to be in, clearly, for everyone. So, common mistakes during a data migration project. Well, in my view, the data migration is seen as a low priority. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I often feel that we're sort of, go to the back of the class, face the wall, as my master used to say. We don't want to know about you. Maybe we might get you in time, but it's low priority. In some cases, I think the data migration is like last resort. Oh my God, we've got some data that we need to move from Razor's Edge to Salesforce. What are we going to do about that? So, I mean, I think it is low priority. It is seen purely as a technical problem. In our view, it's a business problem. There are some golden rules of migration. The business knows best. It is a business issue. You've got to involve the business. So it shouldn't purely be seen as a technical problem. Clearly the tech isn't going to do it, but you've got to involve the business guys. Lack of specialist skills. I think the data migration people have not just got to be techies, they've got to understand how the business uses their CRM system, how the business is going to use it in the target. And they've got to be able to talk to senior guys about what they want to do. Lack of client knowledge and understanding of their data. So, I don't know if there are any clients here today, but we all love our clients. But my experience is that if you work with a client who knows what they want and knows about their data, can answer your DQRs really quickly, it is going to go well. Following a methodology, the process will work brilliantly. And you'll hit, you'll migrate on time, you won't have to spend any more money, you'll just do your loads, perfect. If you're working with a client that doesn't know what they want, doesn't really understand the DQR that you've raised, you could be doing it for a long time, and that's the tricky bit. And I genuinely think that the client underestimates the scale of the activities. I mean, you guys might think that data migration, it's not that hard, just do a bit of mapping scripts and then load it. What's the problem? Well, clients underestimate the scale of the activity you have to do, number of objects, customized objects. There is a lot to do. It's very important. But getting that across to the client is very difficult. It slightly drives me mad, but it's very difficult. And then test loads are completed and reviewed. I don't know whether everyone does test loads. I think they just load the data and fingers crossed, hope we don't hear from the client again. But I think those are the common mistakes that I think are made on migration. So, I mean, everyone has different tools for migration work. We just do everything in SQL. We use SSIS to load the data. You can obviously go to Experian and buy their Pandora product and spend quite a bit of money. There are lots of tools out there, but for us, and I think for most migration people, this should work fine. DQRs, you can use Jira, Google Docs. We use our own Salesforce environment in other cases, and it seems to work well. Every time you raise a Jira, the client gets a notification, so it's perfectly adequate. So, conclusion really, data migration in our view should be a major part of the project. I don't know, that's what we think when the client, I don't know, the SI of the client, it's a difficult one. But I think if you want to go live with Salesforce and have no problems, then I think data migration should be a major part of the project. A poorly done migration can lead to lack of user acceptance. I mean, it's absolutely. Understanding the client's intention with the data is key. Yeah, I think I've really covered that. And then having a proven methodology. I mean, there are other methodologies out there. We just use practical data migration, and it works well. And then having the right ETL tools to each project is vital. So, I'm not going to say that quote. Somebody put that on the presentation. It sounds very good. So, really, thank you very much. I don't know whether I've made a better perception in data migration or not. But I hope I have. Hopefully that's it. Thank you very much.